Natchez Trace Parkway is a 444-mile recreational road and scenic drive through 3 states. It roughly follows the Old Natchez Trace, a historic travel corridor used by American Indians, Kaintucks, European settlers, slave traders, soldiers, and future presidents. Today, people can enjoy not only a scenic drive, but also hiking, biking, horseback riding, and camping along the parkway. Natchez, the birthplace of Mississippi, has a rich culture and heritage, shaped by people of African, French, British, and Spanish descent. Its first inhabitants were the Natchez Indians. The trail was created and used by Native Americans for centuries, and was later used by early European and American explorers, traders, and emigrants in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. In 1801, the United States Army began trailblazing along the trace, performing major work to prepare it as a thoroughfare. To emphasize American sovereignty in the area, Jefferson called it the Columbian Highway. The people dubbed the road the Devil's Backbone due to its remoteness, rough conditions, and the frequently encountered highwaymen found along the new road. By 1809, the trail was fully navigable by wagon, with the northward journey taking 2 to 3 weeks. European Americans founded inns or stands, providing lodging for travelers, from the 1790s to the 1840s. These stands furnished food and accommodations, and contributed to the spread of news, information, and new ideas. The food was very basic. Corn in the form of hominy was a staple, and in addition, bacon, biscuits, coffee with sugar, and whiskey were served. Lodging was normally on the floor. Beds were available only to a few, due to many travelers, and cramped conditions. Some travelers chose to sleep outdoors, or on the porches. In 1810, a Frenchman, Louis Lafleur, established a trading post and inn on the Natchez Trace. The Choctaw natives, and others in the area, called it the Frenchman's Camp. Muscle Shoals Sound Studio was formed in 1969 by 4 session musicians known as the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, who had left the nearby Fame Studios. Artists who recorded at Muscle Shoals Sound Studio included the Rolling Stones, Aretha Franklin, George Michael, Wilson Pickett, Willie Nelson, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Joe Cocker, Paul Simon, Bob Seger, Rod Stewart, Cher, and Cat Stevens. The Alabama Music Hall of Fame showcases Alabamians who had an impact upon the music industry. Ivy Green was the birthplace and childhood home of Helen Keller, who became well known after overcoming deaf and blind conditions to communicate. She became an author and public speaker. The late Tom Hendricks spent over 30 years building a mile-long stone wall to commemorate his Native American grandmother's journey on the Trail of Tears. Meriwether Lewis, of the Lewis and Clark expedition, died while traveling on the trace. Lewis stopped at Grinder's Stand for overnight shelter in October 1809. He was distraught over many issues, possibly affected by his use of opium, and is believed by many to have committed suicide with a gun. Lewis was buried along the trace, and later, a monument was built. The Natchez Trace Parkway Bridge is a concrete, double-arch bridge. It is 1,572 feet long and carries the Natchez Trace Parkway over State Route 96 and a heavily wooded valley. As travel shifted to steamboats on the Mississippi and other rivers, most of these stands closed. Parts of the original trail are still accessible, and some segments are listed on the National Register of Historic Places.